What's up? I'm back. In this segment, we're going to talk about the national anthem, Colin Kaepernick. I hope I'm saying that guy's name right. And just political stuff in general, right? And it's interesting in a sense because, I don't know, like, seems like the last 6 months, but definitely, if you want to say, if you want to really narrow it down, the last 3 months has been quite an intense 3 months. It seems like a lot of racial issues has come to a boiling point. And from my point of view, it's not really that they come to a boiling point, really. It's just that as a country, we're at a critical moment. And I don't want to really talk too much about Donald Trump and politics. I'm going to talk about that in my next video. But what's going on, and from my perspective, is that a lot of issues that we've had as a country have not really been addressed outside certain circles. So now it's coming to a point where it's like anything else. When you don't address something, it doesn't go away. It just goes inside and it bubbles and it builds and then it bursts. Then when you combine that with the internet age of information where everything is just out and open anyway, then you put that together, then you see why we're at the point that we're at right now. So it's interesting because, Colin Kaepernick, I don't even know how to pronounce the guy's last name, right? I'm not really a football fan. But I found the story interesting in a sense because, he came in and he said, I'm not going to stand up for the national anthem because of all the injustices that's taken place with, between cops and black people. And in a way, it was surprising to a lot of folks because a lot of athletes in his position don't do things like that. Now, I do admit, his career he's on the downslide of his career, but still. Right, I mean, he just 3 years ago was in the Super Bowl, to my knowledge. So, he's not like he's retired. He's not like he's a has been like that. So, for someone like that to make a stance was surprising to people. And to me, if he would have just said it, I wouldn't have really even said anything because there's so much other things to talk about. But what I found interesting was the response that took place because of what he said. The response was strange in a sense because if you really look at what he said, he was just like, he's just saying what any normal person would say, like, I don't like all the stuff going on, and this is my only venue to protest it and to bring attention to the problem. But it's not even really to bring attention to the problem. I don't even know if he knows this, but that's always been a question in the black community for a while. There's just some people who look at the flag and see oppression, and they don't really like what this flag stands for. They may not make a big deal about it publicly, but they'll never wave the flag like how other people wave the flag who maybe never have been, I guess you could say, victims to that power of what the flag represents, right? That flag represents the power of America. It represents the systematic power, the military power, the financial power. Like it's a symbol of America, of the machine. And, that's always been something that's been debated. Some black folks, most people would probably stand. Obviously, most black folks would stand, but they would never wave it as hard as other people would. Some people would, some black folks would, but in general, that's always been sometimes a debate. Even if you were a person who says, "Oh, I don't have a problem with the flag," you were just never as patriotic as others might be, right? So when he did this, it was interesting because that's always been like that. But when you're an athlete, you're making money, you got sponsors, you got to play the role a little bit. Then when you're making money, sometimes you could forget the problem until you get in trouble. Until you get in trouble, you could forget the problem. So, that's something that's always been like that. Play this. And this is why I want to talk about it because I just think in general, I think if you're mad about it from the other side, like if you're black, you're probably proud. But if you're not everyone, but because there's been obviously white folks who have said, "Oh, I support what he's doing, even if I don't agree with it." But if you're a person who doesn't like what he's doing, it's cool. I understand. But I've seen people burning his jersey, people really acting all up in arms of what he said. Even Donald Trump says, if you don't like America, you need to leave. And it's interesting in a sense because you're burning his jersey. Like, there's so many other things that happen. Like, as much as people hate Black Lives Matter, we know for a fact there's been a whole bunch of murders of black males who were not doing anything who got killed, ranging from males being told to put their wallet on the take their wallet out, right? And they take their wallet out and they get shot anyway. No gun, right? They do what they're supposed to do, they still get shot. It was a lot of You put it in a dashboard, boom, you still get clipped. So you look at it and then you say, well, why aren't you up in arms over that? Because obviously these are not really criminals, right? I could see if it was criminals that was happening to. Like, some people would say, well, some of them were thugs, and they always use that code word. But we know for sure, there was some people getting killed that stuff did not take place. There was no criminal behavior, and they still got killed. But you weren't up in arms over that. So it shows, even if you are a person who doesn't really agree with how Black Lives Matter operates, there's obviously a problem. There's a problem where, for whatever reason, and I'm pretending to play stupid now. I'm pretending to play stupid. But for whatever reason, a black person's life in America doesn't mean as much as other lives do. And for me, while people may get emotional over that, when you look at it for what it is, it's always been like that in America, right? Think of it. And I've heard someone say this, and it's true. There's all kind of, you have Alcoholics Anonymous, you have even Sexaholic Anonymous, you have all these institutions that help people who are suffering from mental issues. And you have an institution of slavery that lasts about 300 to 400 years, ranging, but for the most part. And when it ends, after 400 years, which is probably like 5 or 6 generations, maybe 4, but I'm thinking the past, probably about 5 generations, 6, 7 sometimes, you are then expected to be like everyone else, which doesn't make any sense. So basically, you go through something for 400 years. After it's over, there's no institutions of how to help you. It's just, okay, now you got to be like everyone else and compete with everyone else. And even compete with people come from other countries, right, who were enslaved. So even though they may come with nothing, they weren't systematically broke down. And it's one thing if you say, well, it happened, but there was no institutions or no nothing to help people cope with that. So once that happens, of course, you're gonna suffer from some kind of psychological defects. And some even black folks may not like to hear that, but it's true. Of course, you're gonna suffer mentally when it comes to certain circumstances, at least especially compared to other people. So it was one crime to have the slavery, but to me, the even bigger crime is to end it and not care. So even if it's 300-400 years later, you're going to see psychological scars from that. Then on top of that, the overall mainstream culture doesn't care or tells you you're making it up in your head. So it's a problem, right? And when you see people acting the way they did over someone not standing for national anthem, I'm keeping it real. But come on, I honestly, national anthems for any country, I always feel it corny. I kind of consider myself a PT, right? And when you're a PT, it's kind of like that was a movement that came up a long time ago that was made up. You could look at it as part-time traveler, permanent. I'm sorry, not part-time. Yeah, part-time traveler, permanent traveler, and it was just people who understood that you live in a global system, and you can't really be loyal to any country, right? So from my point of view, any flag, any country, it's cool. I mean, I always know, even PTs know, 85% of people are always going to be loyal. They're not going to be permanent tourists. That's just not what, it's not taught like that. So that's not really realistic lifestyle for most people. But what is realistic for most people is for people to understand that you're dealing with a global system. You're dealing with elites who just like PTs, but PTs are not rich. They're just people who know how to pool their resources, and they just know how to avoid, I guess you could say, the systematic control that any country has. You got a lot of countries who they'll tell you, you got a passport for this country. If you go to another country, you still have to follow the laws of the country that your passport holder that you have. So basically, it's kind of like slavery. It's kind of like saying, if I'm in America and I'm in another country, I have to still follow American law, even though that country might have different laws, right? So what does that say? That's saying basically that you're a slave to that country. And even though people may pretend that's not the case, of course it's the case. And I bring it up because I'm bringing it up to the point that at the same time, you have to know when how to fight your battles. So, for instance, if you say, I'm not going to salute the flag, because this is my thing. If somebody says, would you salute the flag? I say, yeah, I'll salute for me personally, if I have a choice, I wouldn't. Like, like if I'm not, I mean, if I'm in a sporting game, I don't really get up for the flag. And it's funny, I don't say I'm not going to get up for the flag. I just don't care. That's the difference. I just don't care. Like, it's something where most flags are corny because any country, in a sense, when you look at it objectively, is practicing a subtle form of slavery. No one is really free. Freedom is an illusion. Freedom only comes when you take your freedom. And the problem is, once you understand that freedom only comes when you take your freedom, how could someone give you freedom? So my thing is, though I never begrudge any person of African descent who doesn't stand up for the American flag, I never do it. In fact, when they tell me I don't want to stand for the flag, I never say you should, right? I understand. I may not follow, but I understand. And the big reason why you have to think about it is because if you say I'm not going to stand for the flag, but you don't have any plans of moving your resources out of America or moving out of America, what's the point? That's the difference. When you get people like Donald Trump say, if you don't like America, go live somewhere else, there is a point. He's not right because his intentions is not right, but you give him ammunition when you say, well, if you say, okay, you don't like the country, you're not going to stand up for the flag, but you're going to stay in the country, you only invest in the country is all you know. See, the thing is, in this so-called free market system, the one thing that happens in it is that it's a big world out there. And I don't expect the average person who's struggling with their everyday life to get that and to do anything about it. When you have people who have resources, you have the resource to travel, you got a passport, you could invest, you could make alliances offshore. It's troubling when you say, well, I don't like the country, I'm not gonna stand up for the flag, but then you plan, you end up you're only gonna stay here. Like, you don't have any plans to leave, and you don't have any plans to invest in. Because I always say, you don't have to leave, you don't have to physically say I'm gonna move to another country. But why do you think the Jews are so powerful? Because they got Israel, and even if they don't live there, it's a symbol. But you can you can be Jewish and basically get in trouble in another country and run to Israel, and they'll take you in, no questions asked. No questions asked. Now, I know Africa is not a country, it's a continent, and not only is it a continent, it's a huge continent, so big you could put Western Europe, North America, China, India all in one, and it's still bigger than that. So it's a little different, but there is still some truth to it, especially because you have a lot of right-wing trolls. Because this is the thing that particularly black folks in America, because they're the ones under attack. Sometimes we don't really realize, right, that when you look at the trolls, the right-wing trolls, the people who Donald Trump appeals to, they are not really traveled. Not only are they not traveled, they don't really understand how the world works. They're actually behind in a lot of things. It's like when you look at the neocons, the neocons is the perfect example, right? Because neocons kind of represent that. People kind of stuck in an old mentality where America can't just dominate the world financially and culturally. Because it's really both, right? It has to dominate the world militarily as well. So you got a country like Iran. If you look at Iran culturally, in terms of, probably more liberal than the average country in the Middle East. They're not really Arab; they're Persians, right? They're more Western than almost any country in the Middle East, right? But who are the neocons aligned to? Saudi Arabia. So yeah, from a practical level, you look if you went to Saudi Arabia against going to Iran, 99 of 100 Americans, especially if you're not Muslim, but probably if you are Muslim, would feel more comfortable in Iran. Right? The population of Iran is closer to the ideals of the American people. But if you look at who we allied to, who's our allies, both Democrats and Republicans, it's to Saudi Arabia. That is the neocon way of thinking. They're behind in a lot of things. The neocons are like that kid that's rich because his daddy's rich, but he's a moron, and he's gonna sink his country or his business. His business is gonna sink. If his daddy and his granddaddy, if he's part of a generational, basic kind of institution of wealth, right, that's gonna be gone with him. Those are the same people who like Donald Trump. people who feel marginalized, people who feel fearful of the changing demographics of America. Donald Trump appeals to them, even though Donald Trump, you can spin anything you want to spin about Donald Trump, and I'll probably talk more about him in another video, but he's obviously not capable of running the country. He doesn't know basic issues, but you still vote for him because he spits your rhetoric of, I don't like certain people. And black folks here don't realize that's the case, where you'd have white folks who, and again, this is not about racism, I'm just keeping it real. You'd have people say, oh, I dare you to go back to Africa. But neither the white person or black person hasn't been to Africa. When they think Africa, they just think jungle. They don't know Africa has cities. 33% of sub-Saharan Africa is middle class. 33%. Now, that may not seem like that much, but when you think of it from an overall perspective, you add up probably another 10% is rich. You're talking about almost half of those countries. And again, that's when they add up all sub-Saharan Africa. So there's a lot of African countries that those numbers are much higher, just like there's African countries that those numbers are much lower. So because Africa is a big continent, you got choices of places you can go and set up shop. And this is not really about setting up shop. It's really more about the threat of doing it. The reason why the system treats you like it does is because it looks and says you have no options. You ain't going anywhere. It don't even have to just be Africa. There's other options, right? But no one here, even rich folks who have means, they never do it. You know what it's kind of like? I remember when they had Ted Turner a long time ago, right? Ted Turner was like, he was the king of the South back then, right? And he was like, and they were like, the difference between the South and the North was in New York, there's a whole bunch of billionaires. But in the South, he was the king. Even though there's other billionaires, but traditionally, Manhattan and New York had had the most billionaires in America. That's kind of the same thing I'm talking about. Because as black folks, we don't have a business mind, right? We don't have a mind really set up for building structures that are permanent, structures that can interface with the global network. We think small. So when we think small, you're going up against a system that's global. If you are in Compton, another person's in Southside Chicago, another person's in the Bronx, yes, you're all in the hood. Yes, you're all primarily African American. But most people in those regions only know about those regions. So if they come together nationally, they're gonna come together, but there's gonna be differences that they may not know they have that would that would prevent them from building something real. That's the difference. So like, if that does not clear for you, a perfect example is if you take this system, if you say this system is run by Democrats and Republicans and they both are symbolic of the elites, just two different ends. Most people highlight the differences between Democrats and Republicans. Or, they don't know about politics at all, so they say, oh, they're both the same. Even though they can't tell you how they're both the same, they can tell you some conspiracy, superficial reason how they're all the same. But when it comes down to actually analyzing it on paper, it's obvious they're the same in the sense that there are things they disagree on, but the important issues they agree on. All you got to do is look at foreign policy. They're all pro-Israel. All of them, for the most part, it's not going to break the Saudi Arabian dominance of the Middle East, right? That's going to be their primary, partner out there. No matter what the Saudis do, they're cool, right? For the most part. Then, even when you talk about things like universal healthcare, which I'm not into that at all, right? Obamacare is not universal healthcare. Obamacare helps insurance companies. So when you look at even the things that they claim to be separate with, it's superficial at the top level, honestly. At the top level, it's superficial. Because you look and you see, well, the Republicans would say, oh, okay, we don't care about police officers killing black folks. Democrats would say they care but don't care. What's the difference? The Democrats don't have the guts to actually change police policies. I don't think people understand how powerful police officers are. You forget when Obama first came on and he made certain comments about the cops. I mean, he had to go, what did he have to do? He had to go and drink beer with certain, there was times where Obama, the president of the country, actually had to drink beer with cops who were in the wrong. Think how crazy that is. In a third world country, that would never happen. But I don't think people understand. Like, people just look at America and don't understand. America is built, is set up of different powers. It's not just I'm the president, I can do whatever I want. And in one level, that's the reason why the Democrats are even more despicable, because in the end they have black folks so into, oh, we gotta stop Trump, we gotta stop the Republicans. They don't really realize the system is really one. And no matter who's in office, doesn't change. The changes are superficial. Barack Obama is in office. George Bush was in office. For the most part, the everyday lives of the person in Southside Chicago, the person in Bankhead, Atlanta, the person in the Bronx, right? The person in Compton. Did their everyday life change at all with any president? Not really. Not really. Because in the end of the day, that's what we don't understand as people, is that the system is so global and we think so local. It's very hard to go at that system directly. So when you got the people talk about violence, they're out of their minds. They're going to get annihilated. You forget those guys, you just stay away from them, period. Totally annihilated. In fact, that's probably what they want. It's going to be a short fight. Then when you get the people who just complain, it's understandable to complain, but you also have to look at the problem and try to get solutions. And this is why I always say the greatest leader, black leader, who, if you could bring up any black leader you want, the greatest black leader who ever lived is Marcus Garvey, bar none, because he's the one who, when he was active, that is when the system itself really really got an alert, and they said, we got to destroy this dude. Yeah, other people, they said that, but with him, they got scared because he was the one. He didn't just talk about race anymore. He actually said the Carnegies. He actually started saying names. He actually started saying, what would happen? It's so bad where they even superficially try to control his image, where they say he wanted all black people to go to Africa. He's like, nah, I want the best of you guys to go to Africa. I want you guys to invest in Africa. You don't have to go live there. But if you turn it into something where in times of duress, you can always go back and you could always find some country there to take you open arms. And then when you send your best, you can build it. Guess what happens? We don't really realize that, yeah, we will believe the white ring trolls when they say, oh, you want to go back to Africa? And they laugh. They don't really realize, which Africa are you thinking about? Africa is, like I said, it's a whole continent. You can put North America, Western Europe, India, China, and Russia together, and it's still not bigger than Africa, right? It's a big place. Big place of abundance of resources. Put it like this. I can guarantee someone who says, oh, you want to go back to Africa, and laughs. Ask him this. If I had $3 million right now, and I'm in Africa, and I'm in America, who do you think is living better? So you got to ask. Anyone who travels will know that, right? You got $3 million right now. America is better when you're building your empire. So when Donald Trump tells, or anyone tells you, oh, if you don't like it, you go back to Africa. Well, the response should be, well, you're a business person, right? I mean, Donald Trump talks all this stuff about, oh, you know, well, not Donald Trump, but the right wing talks all this stuff about Russia and these China and these places like that. But guess what? Aren't those people, same people in Russia and China making money? See, the globalists will sell you nationalism, but they're anything but nationalists, right? They'll be in countries making money. They're in countries making money so much, they don't really care which country lives, or which country exists, really, which country lasts. All they care about is which country gives them the best deal to make the most money. That's the Wall Street model. But yet they'll sell nationalism to you. And they'll have you debate things like, should you stand for a flag or shouldn't you stand for a flag? And, well, let me get this country's flag. They say, oh, which country you want to live in? We start debating about which country is best. When you don't really realize the way countries are set up right now at this point, almost any country per se, it's all a form of slavery to some extent. The way you actually judge which country is best for you is if which country will let you do what you got to do without getting in your business. Right? We'll let you shut up shop, and you don't got to worry about some covert operation destroying your shit or sabotaging your stuff. But in terms of, you know, which country's the best, that's why, you know, as I said Africa, I didn't say one country. That's why, in the end of the day, when you look at it very carefully, they have done their best to divide and conquer almost everyone. Because in the end of the day, when you look at it, this system itself, people don't really realize how it's changing so fast. It's changing faster than even sometimes the people running it can comprehend. You know, when you look and you see the fact that at the end of the day, even if somebody says, I'm going to make America great, I mean, you can't really make America great anymore because America now is a military-industrial complex. It used to be banking military-industrial complex, but right now the military has been holding up America. It hasn't been, economically, it hasn't been the same since probably 1983. Economically, the strength of America, the peak of America was after World War II. America then, economically, they used to rule with only economics. They had the military, but economics was how they ruled the world. But since about the 80s, it's been all military. So you can't make America great anymore. And that's what people don't realize. This video is not really about attacking white folks. It's more about asking them, when you're angry at someone for not standing up for the flag, why exactly are you angry? Because in the end of the day, black people are probably the most patriotic Americans you have. There's no other race that would get stepped on for 300-400 years and go serve the military like they serve. For the most part, still throw the flag up like they throw it up. No race would do that. None. And especially when you're not giving them anything too. Like if you were able to give them something back, maybe, right? But no race would just say, you know what? Let's put it this. Even when they complain, they're still saying, help me. I want you to be better. I'm disappointed in you. Because they're patriotic. So when you're treating them the way you're treating them, it says something about you. You know, I made a video on my Orism channel, and I said, and I wasn't even the guy, I don't get into racial politics. And I was just saying that the system itself was set up that at the end of the day, the system itself is racist against black folks. It doesn't really matter who's running it, which party. It doesn't even matter if black folks themselves are running this system. As long as it's this system, they're going to always have problems. I remember I had someone say, oh, that's not true. The only threat to black people is to themselves. And it's interesting because when people say that, understand how rigged the system is. When this system says, when you say African Americans live in America, they live in America, but their culture is not allowed to thrive in America. So what does that mean? Well, that means their spirituality is not allowed to thrive. If they say, you know what? Let me take a DNA test. Let me see where in Africa I'm from. If you get lucky and you could say what tribe you come from. You know, DNA tests are pretty good at narrowing the country. Nigeria, Togo, Congo, Central African Republic. They're not really, from my perspective, as good for knowing the tribes because the tribes are so related to each other anyway. But let's just say you say, you know what? I can take my DNA test. I'm going to now I know what part of Africa I come from, where my primary DNA comes from. I'm going to learn the language. I'm going to practice spirituality. All of a sudden, they're going to call you practicing voodoo, even though voodoo is only from one part of Africa. But in their minds, all African spirituality is voodoo, right? And no matter what they say, they're going to say you're a devil worshiper. And the crazy part of it is, that is primarily done with, for the most part. I mean, they do that to a lot of other pagan systems, but for the most part, they do that to black culture or African culture. So when they do that, automatically you run from it and say, well, I can't do that. So automatically you don't even, you stay Christian. You stay whatever Western institution, Western spiritual system you have, you stay like that. You don't say, I'm going to learn my language. Like if you say, I want to learn language of the tribe I come from, right? Or 2-3 languages. They'll call you radical. But yet they say you're African American. If you're African American, that means you're supposed to know, you're half and half. You're supposed to know part of your African culture, part of your American culture. But you're not allowed to do that. So when they say black culture, it's a certain type of black culture. And what's more dangerous is that they then get you to be reactive. Then you say, I want to learn black culture. But when you want to learn black culture, it's still a reactive black culture. Meaning you're not really learning it out of love. You're learning it because someone is stepping on you. So you still don't end up loving your culture. You end up saying, oh, you throw on some African garb. You pretend, I'm an Egyptian. You say I'm a Kamite. But you don't really love it. You're doing it because you're reacting to someone else, which still serves the system. Because the system knows if it can get you to react, it can read you. The system says, if I call you the N-word and you punch me in the face, or you get mad or you curse at me, the system can plan for how to retaliate against you. But if I call you the N word and you understand what the N word really means, and then you keep it moving, the system doesn't really know how to go out at that type of individual who doesn't react. So if you get mad, it knows how to get at you. If you react by pretending it doesn't exist, they know how to get at you too. But if you know the real deal and you can actually break the system down from an intellectual standpoint, from a social standpoint, when you could look at it from different angles, and you understand what it means, what capitalism really means, what socialism really means, what Marxism really means, they don't know how to come at you, and it doesn't know how to come at you. So it wants to label you, put you in a box, contain you. That's what it does. So when they say you don't like it, go back home. They know you're not going back home, so that's why they say it. Trust me, a true capitalist understands they cannot afford even 10%. Even 10% of blacks in America to start. Forget going to Africa, just investing in Africa. They can't even afford 10%. If you're talking about, the black spending dollars like 500, like I think 500 billion. I think it's like 500 billion. 10% that's like 50 billion, right? A year. You can't afford that. Imagine investing 50 billion a year in Africa. You can't afford that to happen. That's just from 10% of people doing it. So understand that when you get angry, when you say, I'm for someone not standing for national anthem, and then you go into all the reasons why someone's not standing for national anthem, there's nothing wrong with that. But always have a plan. Always understand how does that move matter on the bigger scale of things. If I say I'm not going to stand for national anthem, or I hate this country, but everything I have is invested in this country, I only plan to stay in this country, that is not a good plan. I keep it real with anyone. I tell people, listen, for me personally, this country is the best country to make my money. When I make my money, I might stay. If I stay, I'm going to be investing in other places, and I'm going to be in some other place half the time. Minimum. And that's a 30% chance. Probably I'll be gone. Because you never know how things happen in the world. World politics change so much, so you never want to say, you never want to give something concrete. But I could concretely say, listen, as a PT, as a permanent traveler, nah. I will be, at worst, half here, half somewhere else. At best, all somewhere else. I'm here to make my money. Bottom line. So you can say go back home, and don't even faze me. But that's someone with a plan. That's someone who, I don't just look at what I want Africa to be or what I want any place to be. You gotta go, you gotta travel, you gotta see, you gotta make content, you gotta basically understand that at this stage, if you're gonna fight a global system, you have to be global yourself. That's the difference. If you're gonna fight a system and you only know localized politics, it's not gonna work. Especially if the system is global, it's not gonna work. And I think that's the biggest reasons why a lot of people have been stopped in their tracks. That's the reason why even when you have legitimate movements, they crush them. Because it's like, I mean, you could just look at it. It's like, look at the level, look at the pace organizations like the CIA move at. They move at a fast pace. Imagine if the CIA had to engage local law enforcement. That's what you're saying. Basically, imagine the pace the CIA moves against local law enforcement. Local law enforcement is like buffoons compared to the CIA. Well, the CIA is symbolic of the system. It's global. So when you're coming with these plans that people think they got, and these people coming with plans from 1950, and you think in the year 2016 you're going to beat that system, good luck to you. I applaud you because you're still doing something. You're still doing better than the person who's not doing anything. But at the end of the day, what this whole topic should get you to do is to rethink how you see yourself in the system and where do you see yourself 5-10 years from now. And what do you do? What is your plan to I guess if you look at yourself 5-10 years from now, that's what you want to be. So what can you do in the present to get to that point 5-10 years from now? If you can't even envision that in your head, because before you can go anywhere in the physical, you got to go somewhere in your head. If you can't even see that in your head, then it's like, what's the point? And that's my problem. My problem is we argue about a lot of points, but a lot of points that we have are counterproductive in terms of when you look at the bigger reality of things. So, this has been Siris King. Until next time, peace.